Okay, so we are talking about Adobe Edge Animate Lesson 2 in the book. And if we go into Edge Animate and we go File, Preview, and Browser, we can check this thing out. And it's, obviously it's a little small ad here. And if we hit refresh in the browser, we can see, watch that red leaf up in the top left corner. And you'll see that it's animated just to swing back and forth, right? Now, what they're attempting to teach you in this lesson are a variety of things that you can do with Edge Animate. Obviously there's some animation that occurs back there, but there's other things like using the alpha channel, which is basically transparency, to take things like this background image and make it semi-transparent so that a brown background shows through. Using the align tools to take these text and these images behind them and to line them up so that they're not only aligned, centered over these little bubbles here, these yellow bubbles, but also so that these are spread out, equidistant from each other. How to take rectangles and turn them into these strange shapes and then rotate them and put drop shadows on. And of course, how to add web fonts, right? Now, web fonts are a big deal because they're a way to really take your websites and really take them up to the next level. And web fonts are fonts that are generated by a service, okay? If you, the best place to go to get web fonts is Google Fonts. You can go there and basically you find the font that you want, you grab a piece of code from Google and you drop that into your website, and then those fonts are basically streamed from Google to your website. And then you can use all these really cool fonts on your website. Now, if you are a Creative Cloud owner, Adobe has purchased something called Typekit, which was one of the big web font companies and competing against Google. And when Adobe bought it, they bundled it into the Creative Cloud. So if you have a Creative Cloud membership, you can use Typekit with your websites. Yes.
I actually have that, and I have no idea how to do all the stuff that I got on my Typekit over to my Creative Cloud.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll learn at some point.
I did, I got like a couple of the fonts because I've got the trial membership. I actually bought the Creative Cloud membership.
Maybe that's fine.
Okay.
I actually had the same problem as you, and then I ended up going into the files and actually installing those Windows fonts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it said that they were synced up to my library, and I looked
Okay.
at the actual Creative Cloud panel. It said that they were there, but when I tried to get them on actual Photoshop,
Okay. I'd be interested to look into that and see. Maybe I can help you with that. Okay, so let's go to the file itself. Now, this file that we're looking at here, this is the end version of the file, which means it's the finished version. And, as we saw when we did lesson 1, you can see that there's a timeline down here, very much like Flash, that has layers, and then time moves from left to right. And you can see that if you grab this playback head here and you click on it and you move it, go back to 0, which is the beginning, and move this way. As you move forward in time, you can see the little leaf move. And those leaf movements were created by use of keyframes, which is just like Flash. So anyway, what you can do with this is if you're at frame 1 and your leaf is in a certain position, you can move forward. So what I'll do is I'll just go up to frame to basically half a second in the timeline. I'll click on this leaf here. If I can get the leaf, which looks like it's a little harder to grab than, okay, there it is. So now I'm at 1 second. Now, if I go ahead and create some sort of if I want to create some sort of a animation here, I can go ahead and I can rotate this. Looks like I'm not getting any of the tools that I want. Sorry about this. It's just, okay, that's kind of hard to select. All right, okay, I've got it now. All right, so, well here, I'll just go down to this one that's already here. So you can see there's a keyframe here, and if I take this and I decide I want to do something with it, like move it down or something, I can't select it without selecting everything else on here. Sorry about that. It's just very hard to get. I think I'm gonna give up on their end file and instead open my end file.
What folder?
Oh,
Okay.
simple percent.
Let's do start. Go to copy. Okay, so here's my file, which I think I'll have maybe a little better success with, because I don't know how they locked everything on their file. But see, if I take this and I decide like, okay, at this point I want the leaf to move over here, then what happens is keyframes get created so that, you know, the leaf is over here and then it, you know, comes over here when the keyframes
Ain't gonna bother
hit
me.
it like that. So you can use this just like Flash to go into different places in your timeline and, you know, make movements and stuff, and then what will happen is the leaf will be here at this point and then it will kind of move over to here at this point. So what's happening is, in this case, you're doing two different types of animation. You're doing a rotation, which is this line right here, which is taking the leaf and moving it back and forth, and you're doing a position keyframe animation, which is at this point the left and the top of the leaf are at a certain point, and then at this point they're at a different point, and that creates the animation that occurs from here to here, right? So in many ways, Adobe Edge is a lot like Flash in that it creates a very easy way to make animated elements. Now what's interesting about this is it has a lot of limitations to it too. For example, you can pretty much only bring in graphics, right, like PNG files and GIFs and JPEGs, right? And you can use the objects that can be created here inside Animate, Edge Animate. Now, it's not as powerful as Flash, and it's not as powerful as something like Adobe Illustrator. You're pretty much limited to these shapes up here. You have a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, and a sphere, an ellipse that you can do. But they show you how to do some pretty cool things in here. Like, for example, if you click on your rectangle tool and you come out here and you make a rectangle, right? You've got a rectangle there, but through CSS, you can change the attributes of this rectangle so that it looks like a different shape. So if we come over here to the left-hand side, which is where our properties are, and we click on this corners menu and open it up, we can see that the four corners are here, and these are the four corners of our shape, right? And because we're in the corners menu here, we can choose to angle each of those corners and so that it becomes a curve, right? So what we're doing is we're setting a radius or radii for all the corners. So what I can do is I can go down here and I can click on this little 0 and I can move it one direction, and in this case I'm increasing it to 10, and what you see is what was formerly a rectangle now has a radius of 10 in each of the four corners, right? So this is a way that we can go and take these very basic shapes, which can be basically made into squares and circles and rounded rectangles, and turn them into more interesting shapes, right? So we can set whatever kind of radius we want for that. Now, in addition, we don't have to stick with all four corners using the same radius. We could take two of those corners and we could make them, we could square them back into sort of a rectangle. So by clicking on this little button that's right here and clicking on the top left corner and the bottom right corner, I've left the radius of 10 in the top right and the bottom left, but in the top left and the bottom right, I've returned it back to a rectangle. So now I get a shape that is similar to these. It's sort of an elegant leaf shape that fits in with this kind of fall promotion here. Now then I have options to do things like change the background color of that object, which I can do by clicking on this background color and going to any color here, or clicking on the hex button and putting in a hexadecimal color, and that will allow me to change the background color. Now, one really important point that I need to make about those of you that are following along with your book when you're doing your lessons at home and stuff is that it appears that some of the pictures in the book are outdated when compared to the latest version of Animate Edge. For example, they will tell you, go ahead and make this shape, colorize it, and then give it a transparency of 70%. And you'll look over here and you'll say, well, there's the transparency slider, right? I'll go ahead and click on that and take it down to 70%, but there's no number here that says 70. In the old version of this, there was actually a box that said the percentage number, and you could type 70 in. So when you guys hit that, when you're hitting this book, and you see a screen that looks different, know that that's just because the program is newer than the book. And when they say go to 70%, just go ahead and make your best educated guess of that, right? And I think that's the main place where there's a difference. There's a few other little differences that you'll discover, buttons that have been moved and things like that, but I think with common sense you'll be able to figure a lot of those out.
Why would they disable the alpha in the
You know, I have no idea why they would do that, and it's even possible that it's still there somewhere, but that I just haven't discovered it yet, you know, which is probably, they've probably hidden it away somewhere.
Makes it look stupid.
Yeah, like, well, who knows? Let's click on these other buttons. Maybe it's, nope,
The last digits there for alpha.
that's 78?
Always 78, yeah.
Oh, okay, so you can change that to 70, and then you'll be good. Okay.
0 and 1.
Okay, good. So there's an answer right there. So, okay, so we have that ability in this. Now we also have the ability, you know, and obviously these shapes were made the same way. You know, we were able to edit the radii and everything like that. You know, you guys know obviously that you can click on something, and once it's selected, you can go up there and you have options like rotation and transformation options to go ahead and move something so it's rotated like these guys here. You know. You simply go up to the top left corner where your tools are, and you click on the transformation tool, which is the second one from the left, and then this gets surrounded by a black bounding box, and now you can do things like when you come up to the corner and it becomes a rounded cursor here, oops, and of course it's really hard to select these things. You can click on it and you can rotate it, right? So as the lesson progresses, they have you use these different tools and these different features. Other features that are available are skew, and of course skew is taking something and moving it sort of like a funhouse mirror where you go look at yourself and you're sort of like this way, the sideways. Skewing is taking something and skewing it to the right or left. You have those abilities here in the transform section. You can do it manually clicking on these little handles, or you can put in numbers here which will skew your object. We also have some special effects like a background shadow here. Let's see if I can click on this. There's a background shadow that has been added to that, and some transparency has been added as well. And they'll tell you how to do that inside the book as well. There's a shadows thing that comes up. With this background image right here, the alpha, which is set right here, has been set to 60%. If I take it up to 100%, you'll see that this background image has sort of a gray background back here behind the leaves. But when we take it down to 60%, the brown background of the stage is coming through, which sort of adds to the autumnness of the design there. Now, in addition to all this other stuff that we're doing here, they also have changed the font, which was some very boring font like Times New Roman, to a web font. And you can see over here that the font is called Rock Salt. And the way that they did that was they had you go out to Google Fonts, and you go to Google Fonts and you search for the font that you want. These are some of the fonts that are available, and so you search for, in this case, the font called Rock Salt. And once you find the font, you click on this little icon here, which is called the Quick Use. And you come down here to this little block here. It says, add this code to your website, and then there's a little link here. And basically, you take that and you copy it, and you go into Edge Animate, and you put that information here into this fonts box. You say that you want to make a custom font. It says, what is the embed code, and you paste that in, and it says, what is the name of the font, and you put in single quotes, Rock Salt, and then you hit Add Font, and what happens is it adds that font to your project, right? And now you're able to use that font, so you can simply use the Type tool up here to select your text, and then in the font drop-down that comes up with that, you can then choose the rock salt font. Now, what's confusing about Edge to some people is Edge is kind of like, especially if you've used Flash, Edge is sort of like the bastard child of Flash and Dreamweaver, okay? It can't do everything that Flash can do, and it can't do everything that Dreamweaver can do, but it uses elements of both. So for example, if you were using Flash right now, you would have all these incredible tools, and you can make any shape you want, you can make any animation you want, you can export it and put it up on the web, and you'd be golden, right? But what happens here is we are limited in this world, in the Edge Animate world, we're limited to what HTML5 and CSS can do, right? That's why we have such a small amount of shapes here. You notice there's no stars, there's no polygons. It's because every one of these shapes is being generated by an HTML5 object and CSS code. And CSS code can only do so much right now. It can skew, it can put in a drop shadow, it can round the corners or square the corners. But you know, that's kind of like Photoshop 1.0, right? But that's because this is new software and it's using newer technologies to do the cool stuff that it does. So if you guys feel some frustration when you're in here, that's why. It's because it's all new. But what I'm going to be asking you guys to do for, you know, part of your final project is to make an animation in Adobe Edge that gets dropped into that little box that we left open on your template, your Dreamweaver template. And so you're going to have to, as you're doing these exercises, take a look at what its capabilities are and think about what you might want to do. Okay? Are there any questions about, yes?
Well, could you ever come up with an answer definitively on that question I had about you make a
Video?
movie on this, you use another somewhere that's not in a browser?
I think I wrote you back the answer that I had, which was I think Adobe Edge in its current state doesn't really support video other than the current HTML5 web video formats. So you would have to basically take whatever video you have, and I don't know the formats offhand. I don't know if they're called OOG or whatever the hell they're called, the HTML5 video formats. But you would have to save it into that format, and then you should be able to place something like that in Edge and have it play as an HTML on an HTML document, right?
Isn't that the other way around?
Which is exporting this,
Exporting it as
and I've never seen that capability yet. Yeah. So right now it's just basically animation and interactivity. You know, being able to click on things and make other things happen. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I don't know, I'm not sure if I understood what he was saying, but it's like he's trying to take a regular video and then make it into
No. He wants to say, can we export this to a video?
Oh.
Yeah. And right now
Can we
it's
drag all that into
another
After
program.
Effects?
Right. Yeah. After Effects. There you go. All right. Thank you guys so much. Please finish up your projects for next week. We'll look at them. Please do Adobe Edge Animate for next week. You'll be up to chapter 3, I believe. Get started on this because you're going to need that technology for your final project.
So